Wild drawing is a practice that I've been developing over the last 2 years, and it emerged during the first lockdown for me when I was going on my one daily walk and I wanted to find a creative practice that would help me kind of ground myself in and feel more attuned with all of the different changing seasons and cycles that were happening all around me at that time in the natural world, at a time when in my own personal lives and in everyone's personal lives, the world in which I knew or was used to had been suspended, had kind of ground to a halt. And so drawing became a really mindful practice for me to tap into the the fact that the world is still continuing, and the more than human world was carrying on, and change was in play, and just really noticing that and enjoying that through drawing was something that then I wanted to share with others when we were allowed to meet groups, later on in 2020. So I started leading wild drawing walks in the second half of that year. And in the summer of 2021, I was invited to be an artist in residence at Orleans House Gallery, which is in South London. And they have the most beautiful woodlands there. And so I spent 2 months really hanging out in the woods and inviting visitors to the gallery and members of the public and different community groups, as well as specialists who work in nature. So people from environmental foresters to spiritual ecologists, and from eco-psychotherapists to urban ecologists, and inviting them into the space with me to walk and talk and draw and help me really push my thinking around what wild drawing is, what it could be. And really what emerged during that time was many different exercises and ways of working with different materials that developed wild drawing into something that's more embodied and really about tapping into our sensory experience of the landscape. My intention was really to find ways to attune to that wild, instinctual knowledge that is inside all of us, that we are nature, that we belong to the natural world, that there is no us and then nature. There's the distinctions, the boundaries are artificial, really, and we are in many, many ways interconnected to a dynamic, multi-species, awe-inspiring world, and that we're sharing these landscapes every second of the day with all of these different species. So it's about kind of gently releasing the grip of the ego, really, or finding a more eco-centric way of looking and experiencing the landscape. So centering nature rather than the human as we observe the world around us. And we were doing this in different ways. So, for example, playing with the idea of observing the world through the eyes of an insect, or imagining the mycorrhizal networks underground, or tracing birds in flight, moving with the shadows and the wind, the rain and the light that's traveling through the woods. And we were working with mirrors, with magnifying glasses, with found objects, with ink, and really using whole body movements as well, as much as possible, trying to loosen in order to let in a much broader definition of community and belonging. And so these workshops involved many different people from different walks of life. And in this film, I'm sharing some of those clips from a few of the workshops and some reflections from participants and specialists who joined me during my residency at Orleans House Gallery. I love the eyes. I've just spotted them.
Well, they appear all up the trees, and it just became clear that they were eyes when I was drawing them.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're very wise eyes, those ones.
Yeah, it's very they've been around a while, they've seen things, and they're also very tired because they have endless bags under their eyes.
It really does come up with it. It's good, isn't it, in terms of the veins? You can really see it. Yeah.
realized I heard sounds that I didn't have names for. Because when you're listening to identify what you're listening to, it creates a filter in your consciousness. And you don't pay attention to what is beyond your awareness. But once you stop trying to identify and you fully pay attention without projecting your knowledge, then more enters, more makes itself known.
That's in a way what we're both trying to do, is just sort of shake things up a little so that we notice different things.
Yeah. Looking again at the everyday, really.
Looking again at the everyday, absolutely. So sort of wonder and awe, are hugely important to bring into our lives, aren't they?
The practice is to go with an open heart and be present with the relationship that you have with the natural world, because you're a part of it, because it's where you come from, it's here, it's a mystery. So the other thing for me is allowing space for that mystery, because no matter how much I understand the science of ecology or the knowledge and the facts and figures that we use to map the world around us, the fact is that I don't understand it. It's so much greater than me. And to leave room for that mystery to breathe and be with it.
All my senses, all my thoughts, I guess, my imagination kind of wants to try and immerse itself intuitively, like without, obviously it's built on all the knowledge, all the culture, all the society that I come to this place today with, but at the same time, my imagination and my openness feels the opportunity. And so I relish the kind of that unknownness of it.
It's almost like the sort of, you strip back all that culture and knowledge and everything you're just saying, and like at the core primitive being of yourself has that desire, that willing, that want.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I really appreciate, and I think that so many people miss or do not give themselves the opportunity to comprehend without needing for it to worry themselves about being an artist, or worry themselves about being looking stupid, or believing something that is unbelievable. It's not about any of those things. It's something far more, like I say, human. We've got lots of words that walk around it: meditation and elevation. All these kind of things are trying to, in our Western vocabulary, trying to find that. And that's one of the interesting things about the Western world right now, is that, the more you read around this stuff, the more you're like, okay, we in the Western world don't really have a proper language for this, which is one of the really interesting things. So if you read some really interesting authors around this stuff, you can feel them in their writing going, I'm not quite sure how to express this thing. And that's what this sort of stuff is. This is where this sort of stuff sits.
Climate scientists have been trying to tell us, well, so many people have been trying to tell us for so long, since Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, before that even, good people saying, we can't carry on like this. But I think it needs to be a more visceral thing. But I'm very interested in that emotional connection that used to exist, and I think still does. I think it's just buried, for humans with the forest, with the woods, and that I think has come through in fairy tales and folklore and all those things that were spoken sort of oral tradition, but also more recently through written fairy tales and so on. And it's very obvious in other countries, in Northern Europe. It's very obvious in Sweden, in Germany.
Yeah.
People still do have that connection. I'm sure that's not true in all parts of Sweden and Germany, and maybe it's because it's a bigger land area, and so there's more forest, and the forest is more right there for people. It's on their doorstep. It's in their garden. It's available, wide open
They're
space.
living with it.
They're living with it.
Yeah.
They have much more of a connection. And for some reason we don't here, and I don't know whether that's something to do with becoming more city-based urban creatures who just go out into the countryside to experience it for a day. So it's not something known.
It's about how do we become rooted to this land wherever it is we are. So at the moment we're here, just outside London on this land, and if we lived here, how do we really become part of the land? How do we spend time with the land and really work at building a relationship with the land?
Yeah.
I don't know how to articulate it, but I think you feel more engaged with yourself as opposed to what you're trying to represent, maybe.
Yeah.
So for you, that's sort of more inward looking actually than what you're looking at there.
So yeah.
No, I agree. I think it's drawing it into you rather than, there is something about that, isn't it? It's all about the relationship, isn't it, rather than what's out there and you're here. It's the relationship between the two, and it's more kind of bringing it in rather than you looking out to it. It's quite a weird experience, actually.
And we're going to be moving the charcoal away from us as we breathe out. So we're doing this in cycle with our breath. And I just was trying to find different ways for us to think about that exchange that's always happening between us.
Well, without the plants, we would not be here. Plants and the algae and all the green things, the photosynthetic bacteria that exist, they're the ones that produce the oxygen for us to breathe. And they're wonderfully effective in that about 20% of the air that we breathe in is made of oxygen, whereas the plants and green organisms, are capturing carbon dioxide, which we exhale, which all animals exhale, which is a byproduct of our metabolisms, and a byproduct of burning them too, burning the fossil fuels and burning the plants. But that's still a tiny, tiny percentage of what's in the air, and yet they can capture that. They can breathe it in almost through the stoma in their leaves, through their membranes. They breathe that in, they ingest it in whichever way, and they use the power of sunshine to photosynthesize that carbon dioxide into sugars. And they lock down those sugars inside their cells, inside their bodies. They feed some to the fungi underground. But they store that carbon dioxide and use it to grow. And they breathe out oxygen. Their byproduct is something that we live on.
I feel like you could do as a meditative, it definitely could be a download. Just a few minutes to kind of reconnect with your breath, with Tilly narrating.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Natural world narrations, we could call it. We could set up a whole podcast.